It's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-fi, also known as Marc Zicree of Space Command, and you can find all about Space Command at spacecommandmovie.com. What I want to talk about today was Guardians of the Galaxy and the lineage of the scoundrel in science fiction, because in recent decades, the anti-hero as hero has become much more prevalent in science fiction, but that wasn't always the case. If you look at Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon or even the Captain in Forbidden Planet, these guys are very much heroic characters. They're straight arrows. They might have their little quirks, but basically they're straight kind of guys. Whereas nowadays you have the scoundrel as the hero, and I wanted to talk about the development of that because. I was just watching Serenity, which I like very much. In fact, I prefer it to Guardians of the Galaxy, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I think the whole genesis of my thought process on this subject was a couple of years ago when I had lunch with Damon Lindelof, and this is just after I had co-written and produced and directed Star Trek New Voyages World Enough in Time, which starred George Takei and got nominated for the Hugo and the Nebula. And you can watch it on Vimeo, or you can just email me and I'll send you the link. Or you can go on to marczicree.com, and there's a link there. You can actually click right through and watch the entire episode. But I was talking to Damon, because he was just ramping up to do the Star Trek movie with JJ, about the fact that all of the characteristics that make Jim Kirk interesting, Captain Kirk, are his negative qualities. He's not nearly as loyal a friend as Spock or Dr. McCoy. He's egotistical, narcissistic, has a girl in every port. It's fascinating, and the reason he's that way is because essentially he's a television science fiction version of Gene Roddenberry. Gene Roddenberry took his own characteristics. He'd been in World War II, he'd seen combat, all of that stuff. He'd been an airline pilot, so he had his heroic streak. But also, he was married when he did Star Trek, but Majel Barrett, who played Nurse Chapel, was his mistress, and he ensconced her in an apartment around the corner from Desilu, and it had his affair with Nichelle Nichols. So the womanizing characteristics of Kirk certainly came from Roddenberry. The narcissism, the egotism, the boasting, all of the preening qualities came from Roddenberry, and then of course William Shatner with his egotism and wanting to hog the limelight and his scene stealing qualities. Those actually fit the character very, very well. It was a very good match. If you compare him with Jeff Hunter, who played Captain Pike, he's not nearly as interesting as Kirk for those exact same reasons, the negative qualities. And and it's very funny. By the way, just as a little aside, if you ever look at it, William Shatner's acting style is very similar to Sidney Poitier's. If you ever see Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, Poitier has a speech where he goes, "You're my father. I'm your son. I love you." Anyway, just a little thing. On the other side, by the way, is if you ever look at the young Roy Rogers, he has the exact same face as Nat King Cole, and no one has ever noticed that, so I share that with you. Continuing about the scoundrel in science fiction, we move on to some of the other greats. Of course, Han Solo in Star Wars, and come on, is Luke Skywalker nearly as interesting as Han Solo? It's always the character who you wonder if he's going to rise to the occasion, and then of course he does if he's a hero. And Han Solo and Indiana Jones and Blade Runner, I think they're all getting that element of danger from Harrison Ford, who brought it very well in those films. And again, it's those qualities, that razor edge quality of self-involvement, a little bit of meanness underneath the kindness, a little reluctance to be good. And now, of course, in cinematic terms, this all stems, I think, from Humphrey Bogart, because he was the first great anti-hero turned hero. And if you look at him first in Petrified Forest, he just blazes on the screen, and he just burns, Bette Davis and Leslie Howard right off the screen, and you just wait for that guy to play a hero. And then they put him in High Sierra, and then, of course, Casablanca, Maltese Falcon, African Queen, and he found his niche. But again, it was always that element of danger, that where he could turn on a dime between being kind and being cruel, and that's the thing we're seeing now in science fiction with some of these characters. But again, if you look at the lineage of Guardians of the Galaxy, it's very interesting because there's certain things that I don't think many people have noticed. For instance, in terms of lineage, it's very interesting to study Serenity/Firefly, which would have been a success on Fox if they had handled it correctly. But it's a movie I like very much, and I think that it's well worth seeing if you haven't watched it. But for me, the dry run for that show/film was the script that Joss Whedon wrote for the fourth Alien film, because although it's not well directed, it's actually very well written. And Winona Ryder and Sigourney Weaver and Ron Perlman are very good in it. So if you can kind of ignore some of the Gallic humor that doesn't work, some of the flourishes that the director brought to it, and just look at the, sort of read between the lines, you can see, this sort of freebooter crew who then kind of evolves very naturally into the crew in Firefly. And then, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy is very, closely related to those characters. And I know Guardians of the Galaxy came early, was done as a comic book a long time ago. But again, we're talking about science fiction films and their natural evolution in this stage. Now, also, there's the character who's an anti-hero turned hero, but some actors really have that edge, such as Bogart, such as Harrison Ford, and others seem a little bit like a paper tiger. So, for instance, Star-Lord, for me, is not authentically a roguish character, whereas certainly Rocket Raccoon, and yes, I do know it's Rocket Raccoon and not Rocket Squirrel, as I said in my previous video. Thank you for correcting me. Rocket Raccoon, as voiced by Bradley Cooper, very much is that kind of dark, wonderful, dangerous anti-hero turned hero. So for me, again, he's the most interesting character in the entire film. And by the way, for those who don't know, who just think I said Rocket Squirrel and that was just a slip, Rocket J. Squirrel is Rocky the Flying Squirrel. And if you don't know that character, again, check it out, because it's a wonderful, wonderful character voiced by June Foray, who did many cartoon voices and was also the voice of Taki Tina in Twilight Zone. So anyway, that's it for now. If you want to talk to me about your favorite science fiction anti-heroes, there's plenty of them in literature as well. Tweet, comment, subscribe, spread the word. We're getting a lot of response. Thanks so much to everyone, and we'll talk again real soon. Bye-bye.